designed to encourage, empower, and educate real estate professionals by sharing best practices from business leaders that are proven winners. I'm your host, Kyle Malnati, and this is Calibrate Real Estate. Broadcasting from the Mile High City, thank you for tuning in to the Calibrate Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Malnati, and we're here to encourage, empower, and educate you, the real estate professional. This episode is going to be really fun. We're going to be talking about a subject near and dear to my heart. For those of you that know me, you may know that I've been a realtor for 13 years. And what you might not know is that most of my business has actually been in commercial real estate, helping investors buy and sell apartment buildings in Denver. So I'm often asked by the residential real estate community, as well as just people who are interested, whether it's at a cocktail party or over at a friend's house, or just in my daily life, I get asked these questions. But then I also have been asked to present formally on the subject of real estate investing. And over the past 4 years, I've been podcasting, and my original podcast was actually called The Kyle Malnati Show, and it was actually geared towards real estate investors and asking them questions about how they got their start, how they became successful, what advice that they would give to a younger real estate investor. And that was a fully YouTube-oriented podcast. If anyone wants to check that out, again, it was The Kyle Malnati Show. And we're going to talk today about the 10 attributes that I believe make a real estate investor successful. This is a presentation that I did in front of a group of real estate professionals in Washington, D.C. You're going to hear our MC for the event, Brandon Green, introduce me, and I'm going to unpack my 10 attributes of successful real estate investors. And the way that I got to this content is I thought back to not only the podcast interviews that I did, but every meeting, every phone call, every discussion I would have with a real estate investor over the past 13 years, I would think about and say, gosh, what makes that person successful? And I distilled it down to these 10 attributes. And I presented them to a group of real estate professionals, and I'm excited to present them to you again today. So Brandon Green is going to be providing the intro of this topic. And again, you will hear me present to a group of real estate professionals about the 10 attributes of successful real estate investors. Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this week's podcast. And as I love to say, I will see you around the neighborhood. Bye, everybody.
A couple things I've noticed, though, about Kyle is he has become a real student in an area and is really mastering the art of both interviewing and understanding the various dynamics around real estate investing. And so we were having a conversation about this event, and he is always willing to share. He's very generous. He does these national conference calls all the time. He said, how can I help? So, I think what would be really cool for people to hear is what you've been learning as you've been interviewing these top performing real estate investors from around the country. And so he said, absolutely. He's put together a presentation for you today. So let's give a warm welcome, round of applause to Kyle Malnati from Colorado.
Thank you, Brandon. Yeah. What an exciting event. What a great room of what I like to call high octane, high protein, thoroughbred racehorses here. I mean, this is the creme de la creme of real estate, right? So what I'm here to present is all about real estate investing. Like Brandon said, the idea was born a couple of months ago as they were preparing for this event. And we just said, we've got an opportunity to talk to a group of real estate agents about real estate investing, which is my niche. I help people buy and sell 5 to 50 unit apartment buildings in central Denver. And that's a very different slant to the business than a lot of my residential real estate brethren. And the interesting thing about it is a lot of my clients are actually realtors. I've been sort of dubbed as the realtor's realtor. And part of that is because I have, there's a Keller Williams agent in Denver that is complimenting me by saying, you're a commercial agent, but you really act like a residential realtor. And I have found this wonderful spot in the business where I can interact with residential realtors in a very common, courteous way. And most of my commercial folks that I work with and compete with don't act that way. And you may have experienced this in your own careers as you call on an apartment building or a commercial space for lease. And so I've always really embraced the residential realtor. My goal with this presentation is to give you some takeaways that if you get a call from an investor, and I think quick show of hands, who's ever gotten a phone call from an investor? Someone wants to buy a house, buy an apartment building, most of the room here. So get some takeaways there, but also be reflecting on your own investments and the ability for you to grow wealth in real estate, which we all have this amazing ability to have the inventory right in front of us, and we work in the business day in and day out, and we should be able to buy pieces of real estate throughout our career. And when we interview Bo after this, we'll be talking to a real life investor, which will be a lot of fun. Thank you for helping me retire. What you see pictured up on the screen is a client of mine named Jim. Jim is somewhat of a regular guy. He enjoys Hawaiian shirts, and he and his wife have lived in Denver for a long time. He actually invited me to a retirement party of his just a few weeks ago. So my wife, Courtney, and I had really never been to a retirement party before. And I don't know about you guys if you've ever been to one, but I'm just kind of picturing what I'm going to see at this retirement party. And so we're preparing for it and going forward, and we arrive at the event, and Jim lives in a condo building in Denver's Cherry Creek neighborhood. He's worked for Lockheed Martin for 32 years, and so we talked earlier, there was a comment about being in rocket science. Well, Jim literally is in rocket science. One of the smartest guys I know, but as a rocket engineer and as a satellite engineer, he's on salary, and many of the people in this room probably can make incomes higher than someone that's working for Lockheed Martin for that period of time. So I'm kind of thinking here, okay, what's this all going to be about? We walk into the room, it's this big community room, and the place is jam-packed. I mean, 8, 9 people deep. I'm literally, it's like you're in a crowded bar trying to fish through all the different people. My wife and I end up getting to the back, which is where the drinks are being served. We see Jim across the room, and he knows he knows me very well. He knows my wife, though. He's met her before. And he kind of waves and then starts to try to find a way to get to us. It's about 3 or 4 minutes later, he comes to us, and we say our hellos. Of course, we say congratulations, because, I mean, it's not every day that someone retires, right? And it seems like in our society, people are delaying retirement longer and longer. And the more people who are being forced into retirement early because of health or disability and living off of Social Security is really scary. So it was wonderful to see this situation where someone's retiring with dignity, retiring in a place where he was making choices, and retiring, frankly, earlier than a lot of other people at Lockheed. So Jim comes up to us. He says, "Hey guys, thanks for coming in." And we said, "Well, thanks for inviting us, congratulations." And he goes, "No, thank you for helping me retire." And I was like, a compliment in front of my wife too. So I'm like, I want to soak this in. I want to get this as best as I can. And so I kind of encouraged him a little bit. I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he goes, "Thank you for helping me retire. Without the work we've done together in the apartment business, I would have never been able to do this early." And Jim loves to play golf. He loves to go traveling overseas with his wife. When you go into their condo, there's all sorts of artifacts and different things from their trips. And so what I do in the apartment world is really more about establishing a retirement vehicle for people, establishing a way for people to fund their kids' college, and also to create a legacy for not only your children, but your children's children. And I sincerely mean that. There's a deep purpose in what we do. It's not this real quick, get rich type of thing. We're in the crockpot business. We're slow cookers, baby. And what we do is we help people basically get to retirement. So what I've noticed, and Brandon introed this, that from talking to clients, both in my podcast on YouTube, which I've been doing for about 2 years, interviewing someone about how they're successful in the industry, how they got started, things that they see, different trends within the neighborhoods they work in, but also just over the last 12 years of being a commercial realtor, I've sat kneecap to kneecap with a lot of really successful investors, and I'm wondering what makes them tick. And it's interesting because even though they're coming from different circumstances, different races, different religions, different creeds, different backgrounds, they couldn't be more different. It's actually really hard to nail down, like, here's the perfect investor. But these attributes, these traits continue to come up time and time again. And what I have found is that by observing these individuals that invest in real estate, and these are private capital individuals, that means they're investing their own money. So by observing these people, I've realized that there's some pretty common traits that come along. Trait number 1, they are bold. Now, I don't drive a lot in DC, but I've observed this week that I have to be bold as heck to drive around the Beltway. All kidding aside, I actually was born in Fairfax County, but my family relocated out to Denver when I was in 8th grade. So I never really got the ability to drive in DC. And holy cow, that is a full contact sport. Just amazing stuff, and I'm sure you guys understand. So they are bold. What you see in front here is the majestic buffalo, which is native to Colorado. Buffalo are a real interesting animal. Buffalo have some really intricate traits, and they've actually been on the endangered species list for a while. And Colorado as a state is one of the only areas where you actually find buffalo alongside cows. And my career coach is a guy named Rory Vaden. Rory's in Nashville, Tennessee now, but he grew up in Colorado. And Rory observed this and put it in his book, Take the Stairs, which was a bestseller 3 years ago. And Rory talks about buffalo and cows. Colorado has this really unique topography. If anybody's ever been to Denver, you fly in basically in the plains. In DIA, it's so far out and everybody complains about that, but the city's growing towards the airport. On the west side, you have the Rocky Mountains, and that's one of the biggest things that we're famous for. So in the summertime, we get these vicious, violent thunderstorms. I mean, we get tornadoes, we get all sorts of crazy stuff. And pretty commonly, those storms come over the Rocky Mountains to the west and roll out to the Great Plains in the east. Now, buffalo react to storms a little bit differently than cows. Buffalo actually sense the storm, they see it, and they run into the storm. Now this temporarily forces pain before they should be feeling pain. But what they do is they actually run through the storm so quickly that they actually minimize their amount of time in the storm. Cows do the exact opposite. We all know cows are not that smart. Even in DC, I'm sure you've been out there and seen cows, cow tipping, you hear about people making fun of cows. So cows kind of sit there and they say, I'm gonna run away from the storm. And they run and they run, and what they actually do is they maximize their pain within the storm because they're running and the storm is pacing with them. So they actually spend more time in the storm than buffalo do. And so the point I'm trying to illustrate, and the point that Rory illustrates in his book, is that you need to be bold. You need to start. You need to have something that you go and do. We're all gonna face challenges in life. We're all gonna face obstacles. And actually, as I was preparing for this presentation, I thought about it. Truly successful people actually embrace challenge and they embrace obstacles. And so what you do as the buffalo mentality here, you charge into that storm, figure things out, and move on. They are optimistic. Now we all remember the Broadway musical Annie, right? So we've got this situation where we see a beautiful sunset, and the song is, "The sun will come out tomorrow." So what I mean by that is, doesn't mean that you always have to think of rays of sunshine and be positive all the time. And I'm a big believer in positive mindset and affirmations, but we all get down. We're in a business that's very difficult, and frankly, you gotta be a little bit crazy. You gotta have a wire loose to be in our business at times, especially during downturns. The optimistic folks in real estate, both investing as well as realtors, realize that they've got this inner confidence in themselves, that they're always gonna make it through. That there's always, even as dark as it can get at night, there's always going to be the sunrise the next day. So as you see the sun setting, realize there is going to be another day, and the point is to live to fight that other day. As I think of optimism, my wife Courtney and I have 3 little kids. We went from 0 to 3 in just 16 months, so we're a little wild. We had our first daughter. She was 16 months old, and then we delivered twins. And I say we like I was, somehow helping her. She was doing all the heavy lifting, I assure you. So we have these 3 little kids. They've grown through preschool. Our oldest daughter is in kindergarten, and then our twins are in their last year of preschool. They'll start kindergarten next year. So we're gonna just bang through every phase of life, right? But the thing that you notice when you spend any time around little kids, especially preschool age kids, is their optimism is infectious. If you've ever seen a little kid dance, you would expect that they feel like they're the only and the best dancer ever, right? If you've ever seen a little kid that has a drawing, they show it to you, hang it up on the wall. And my wife, who's definitely the orderly and kind of clean person in our household, sneaks those to the trash pretty quickly. And then she's got a bin that's highly organized down in the basement for the keepers. But little kids have that optimism. And I've noticed with great real estate investors, that optimism is pervasive. pervasive. It's all part of their being, and that's what allows them to get through the challenges, like I was talking about when we were speaking about being bold. They are authentic. Now, authenticity is kind of one of those funny things in life where authentic is kind of gotten stretched as a term. So we put it into the 21st century here and said, let's keep it real. What I mean by that is, do you remember, and I heard this when I started in the business in 2004, do you remember the phrase, fake it till you make it? Fake rich. I've always wanted to do this. I don't get out much because we've got those 3 little kids, so I've always kind of wanted to stack cheddar and just make it rain, right? So that's my most expensive, that's a real live prop, that's a real $100. I'm gonna be watching all of you during break, okay? So, do you remember whether you're working with a real estate investor or you see a new agent in the business and they've got the fancy shoes, they've got the perfectly appointed outfit, and that's all great, but you know that they're struggling. They're not making ends meet, and they're faking it until they make it. The best real estate investors that I've worked with are really, really genuine. They're really authentic. And I think as a millennial, I'm on the leading edge of the millennial generation, being born in '82, but as a millennial, we have that even more apparent in our social media profile. Think about just how disappointing it is when you're clicking through Instagram or Facebook or Twitter and all you're seeing is a highlight reel. And in yourself, you start to get disappointed in the fact that you're not on that trip, or you're not on that vacation, or your life doesn't seem as glamorous as what maybe someone else's perception of their life is. Well, it's not genuine, it's not real, it's not authentic. And the people that I work with in real estate, the truly very good private capital individuals that invest in real estate are authentic. Most of them have paint-stained jeans. A lot of them are actually changing out plumbing fixtures in their units. Some of my clients are actually contractors. They're genuine, they're authentic, they keep it real. They have great relationships. That authenticity bleeds in to having great relationships, both personal and professional. I love the author and speaker Dave Ramsey, and I was at an event a couple months ago now where Dave talks about this and reminds us that when you were in grade school math, we talked about integers, and integer is just simply a whole number. Now, integer is the root word of integrity, and so when you think about integrity, that is the wholeness of yourself. And what I mean by this is having great relationships starts with your integrity. And you've got this ability to either show yourself that you're authentic to people or kind of hide that and be that fake rich, fake person. And I think great investors realize that they are authentic to create great relationships. And what I mean by great relationships is, I've noticed this in my own brokerage business as well as my clients, as they buy apartment buildings and acquire real estate, they start to realize that they need a team. They need a team of great attorneys. They need a team of great management, whether that's on-site management or professionally hired management. And so they seek out those individuals that are high excellence, individuals, and they really want to make sure that they surround themselves with people that know more than they do about the subject and can create an ability for them to basically stand on those experts' shoulders. So great relationships are really important. For myself, as I think about personalities and great relationships, I have to think about my wife. My wife and I are high school sweethearts. We met when we were juniors, and I've known her for 16 years. My wife knows my strengths, she knows my weaknesses. And in fact, she complements my weaknesses, and that's why we make ourselves a great couple. But when you talk about great relationships and then relate it to your strengths, one of the interesting things is the things that you're naturally strong with sometimes rub on your partner the wrong way. We've all heard the phrase opposites attract, right? Well, I also like to say opposites attack. And when you're in a weak moment, when you're in a bad spot, those things that you love about your partner, that significant other, really annoy you. Let's take a couple examples. My wife, Courtney, she's really organized. I mentioned that earlier. I'm not, I'll probably take me an hour to clean all the dollar bills off of the floor, and it just doesn't come naturally to me. So she really helps us in the house that way. I tend to be real outgoing. I love events like this. This would frighten the heck out of her to be up in front of people sharing her thoughts and ideas. She tends to be more reserved. I am positive But at the same, and I'm outgoing, but at the same time, some of my closest friendships are very few. Courtney tends to have very, very genuine, deep relationships with a lot of her girlfriends. And so we complement each other, and she stretches me in areas that I'm not good at. And she knows my strengths, I know her strengths, and those two things make us a better couple together. They make us a power couple. So when you're thinking about strengths, try to figure out yourself, as well as the real estate investors that you're working with, what they're naturally strong at. What led you to this point? Most of the time when I work with real estate investors, they've already owned a rental house. They've already had experiences within the city that they're operating in. And so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to then go switch gears and go and invest in a completely different state that they have no experience in. So just kind of start with your strengths. Start with those areas that you already understand and that you're very, very good and in tune with. The other thing too is start with your strengths as it comes to the roles and responsibilities that you're gonna have in real estate investing. So there's tons of different ways to figure this out, right? I'm a big subscriber to the DISC personality profile. There's Strengths Finder 2.0, Myers-Briggs. I mean, you can figure out any number of strengths-based testing. Figure that out within yourself. One of the things we're starting to toy with is actually surveying our clients and figuring out their strengths so that we can adequately serve them by understanding how they think and operate. Because just because I'm a wide open, high energy, talkative guy doesn't mean that my client that's the CPA wants to hear me yammer on about what's going on in the weather. So just think about your clients, but also think about what your strengths are naturally and really go into those strengths. Final point on strengths, my brother who lives here, he lives in Gaithersburg, he relocated back out here after we were in Denver and was in the military, and he said that the military is very keen on using your strengths and building them up to the point where they're almost Hulk, super strong, and exploiting the enemy. Because it doesn't make a ton of sense to build up your weaknesses to the point where they're just kind of barely strong suits. Take the things that you're naturally good at and become really strong. And so surround yourself with people that are experts. And one of the things that I think real estate investors know is that our business tends to transact a lot off market. We know a lot of the different buildings, we survey those, we have a database, we make a lot of prospecting phone calls, and so our clients lean on us as a great relationship as realtors. And I think that that's really important too, is making sure you've got a good broker. They are intentional. We all remember the old Aesop's fable, right? The tortoise and the hare. Well, the tortoise is not supposed to win, right? He's slower, he's a little bit uglier. Sorry if any of you went to Maryland and you're a terrorist. I used to love the Maryland Terrapin, so I was waiting for that one. But you know, the hare should win. He's faster, more cunning, more talented, but kind of lazy in a way, and also has this brash bravado where he just assumes victory. Well, the tortoise slowly plods along. And great investors, again, like I said earlier, it's not a get rich quick and out. It is a get rich slow business. We're in the crock pot business. And so being intentional, seeing that finish line way down in the distance and marching forward step by step. Just a few weeks ago, I closed on a transaction with a lady that she surprised me when she proactively said it. She's like, you know, Kyle, her name's Carol. Carol says to me, you know, I'm 74. And I looked at her and I go, you look like you're much younger than that. I didn't say what age, but you look like you're much younger than that. And she's like, I know, that's why I said that to you. She had been divorced for a couple of decades now, lost one of her first apartment buildings to her ex in the divorce, but then bought in the 90s. And a couple of weeks ago, she was closing on her second property that she decided to buy. And you kind of think, why is a 74-year-old going to be reinvesting? I mean, she's kind of late in the game. A lot of people talk about people retiring at 65, but she said, you know, I like real estate, and I've always been a plodder. That was her term, not mine. I've always been a plodder, and I plod along and just kind of find my way. And the other person at the closing table was the seller, who I have a great relationship with as well, and his name's John. John owns about 100 or so pieces of real estate, 100 units or so in Denver, and his family's generationally been in Denver for the last century. They've owned real estate. His grandfather and his father and his grandfather. John's sons and John's daughter were actually on our podcast just a few months ago in December, and John said, real estate rewards plotters. It rewards the slow and methodical, the deliberate, the person that goes to that final destination. and doesn't allow things to quit. And that's a fairly simple plan. It's not all that sexy or exciting. I've worked with some fix and flippers, I've worked with some condo converters, and those can be real complicated, real time and space, short term, you better hit the market right type of deals. Most of the clients I work with operate on a pretty simple plan. It's kind of boring, actually. And one of the best real estate investors that I've personally met puts money once a month into a mutual fund that has a good, steady return, and when a deal is found, something that's below market, he'll go and buy it. And he'll do that. Wash, rinse, repeat, again, and just collects real estate. So the simple plan for most of my clients is they collect and hold real estate. They don't sell that often. Most of my clients buy legacy assets, actually. Properties that they fully intend, they're in great locations, and they fully intend to pass those on to their kids. Not every single client's that way, but really the truly great families in real estate buy great assets that all fit within the unique fabric of what they're trying to do in the city. And it's a fairly simple, deliberate, straightforward plan. They create multiple income streams. I love this photo because it reminds me of my daughters. It's almost Easter, and you got the little Easter egg hunt going on, but it's the old saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And what we're talking about here is diversification, which means spreading risk around. Now, you can diversify your investments, both if you're in stock or mutual funds or in real estate, by buying different types of real estate, different locations, different asset classes, etc. But what I'm actually talking about here is my clients diversifying themselves by creating multiple income streams. A lot of my clients are real estate agents, like I said. So they work in the residential real estate world, but they buy multifamily, and our businesses are not yoked. They're not in tandem, always doing the exact same thing. So sometimes when the residential real estate market is flying high, you can buy commercial real estate at a bargain. And then inverse relationship, sometimes it's the opposite way, where when residential real estate might not be doing so well, you're dang happy that you've got that apartment building that's subsidizing some of that income. Other situations, I've got clients that own pizza stores, I've got clients that own painting companies, I've got clients that own siding. They've got different income streams coming in, and the whole point there is that their real estate is a piece of their entire picture. It's not the entire focus, because whenever you get really, really focused in on an investment, if it doesn't work out, that kind of becomes this casino moment where you're pushing all your chips in to the middle of the table and you're hoping that it works out. And I just don't like that. I don't operate that way. Most of my clients also do that. They have separate income coming from different situations. So this picture I love because it gives the analogy, and it's very apparent, of LeBron James driving and scoring. And I love the basketball analogy. Koki would agree. Real estate investors are driven. They're determined. They're deliberate. They see the hoop, they drive the lane, and they score, baby. You know what? Sometimes they don't, though. Sometimes they get the ball rejected. Sometimes they get fouled, and it's no fault of their own, but they got hacked. They continue to get up and go on and continue to drive the lane and go to the hoop. And Bo said this in my podcast with him in July. Bo said so much of life is not about how hard you can hit, but how hard you can get hit and then get up, how quickly you get up afterwards. And I love that demonstration of being driven, being deliberate, being determined in what you're doing. They learn to decimate debt is the final point here. Now this will probably be the most controversial slide that anybody's going to see today of my presentation. I had mentioned earlier that I'm a big Dave Ramsey fan, so a lot of you already know what that means. If you don't, certainly come up to me if you'd like a further description. But what I found is that it's really, really rare to see an 85-year-old that's getting a new mortgage on their apartment building. Most of the people that I know that are really successful for decades learn, even if they bought with a loan, they learn how to reduce that principal very quickly and pay it off quickly, because the beauty of rental real estate is that cash flow. I've got situations where clients of mine are teachers, literally teachers, public school teachers. They bought an apartment building, they worked on it on nights and weekends, and their apartment buildings produce more in annual income to them in their pockets than their teaching salary did. I've got clients that are first responders, firefighters, paramedics, police officers. They work these 48-hour shifts.
And then when on their off days, they go work on their apartment buildings. And these people realize that this isn't about using OPM, other people's money. And that's one of those things that in finance gets talked about a lot. I got my degree in finance with a minor in banking and financial services. And one of the biggest topics in business school is how you can use other people's money. Use that leverage, right? And I read Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was in college, and the first thing I wanted to do was go and buy an apartment building, go and buy some rental real estate. But here's the thing, when you involve leverage, you involve risk into the calculation. And risk is determined in a financial equation by talking about a beta. So most investors don't calculate risk in their investment. Most real estate brokers and real estate investors have this broken risk meter, frankly. And they really, what ends up happening is they don't account for the fact that when you become in a situation where you've got a loan, you are beholden to the bank. There's a great interview on YouTube by Mark Cuban. It's on my blog, and it's really easy to find. It's Bloomberg TV. And the interview goes along for about a minute, and the lady asks Mark about having a business and financing your business. And Mark specifically says, and this is pretty harsh, if you involve a loan in your business, you're a moron. And the reason why he says that, he goes on further to explain that when you put credit in that equation, you no longer serve your client. You serve the bank first. The bank's gonna get theirs. And it's the same as for real estate. And I know a lot of people use real estate financing. It's one of the biggest ways that people get into real estate, but I would encourage you, if not implore you, to, if you have a loan on real estate, work on paying that down pretty quickly. And the benefit there is obviously cash flow.